Some quick introductions. I'm Stephen Coe. I'm the chair. We've got Garrett Craig, Heidi Rosenleith, Shanna Adams, and Mike McEwen here as board members. And we've got Julia, Aiden, and Joella here as staff. So let's go ahead and move on to first item. Approval of the zoning board adjustment minutes from June of 26. Those were sent out. Has everybody had an opportunity to review these? Okay. Does anybody have any comments before I ask for a motion? All right. Somebody like to make a motion to approve these?
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion to approve the minutes from June 2026.
Okay. And second?
I will second that motion.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion before we vote? All right, all those in favor of accepting the minutes as presented indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Same sign for nay. Okay, thank you. Moving on to unfinished business is 3. We've actually postponed that to a special meeting next week, is that right? Okay, on the 23rd? Okay. And then for the new business, I'm going to actually move up variance 2616 to the front. That one may take more time than others, just so we make sure we have the time to do it and get through it. So, Aiden, is that you?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
Thank
Aiden,
you.
do you have a staff report for us?
Yes.
Okay.
All right, so this is on a location which would be to be determined West Granite Street, variance 26-16. The applicant is Michael Spar. The proposal is to vary from conditions outlined in the Butte-Silver Municipal Code, Chapter 17.14, the R3 multifamily residence zone, to facilitate the construction of a 3-story, 8-unit residential building on an undeveloped 6,000 square foot lot located in Uptown Butte. Here we have the described variances. First, 171450 minimum lot area requires a 16,500 square foot lot for an 8-unit multifamily development. The applicant requests approval to construct the proposed development on a 6,000 square foot lot. 171460 minimum lot width requires a lot width of 80 feet for multifamily residential development. The applicant requests approval for 60 feet or the width of the existing lot. 174080 minimum side yard width requires a side yard setback of 12 feet on the westmost property boundary and 14 feet along the side adjacent to Clark Street. The applicant requests side yard setbacks of 5 feet along both side property lines. Lastly, 173640 vision clearance triangle corner lot prohibits development within the triangle area formed by the intersecting property line nearest the streets and a straight line adjoining from said property line at a point which are 25 feet distance from the point of intersection measure along said property lines. The applicant requests that 5 square feet of the proposed development may encroach into the described triangle. On the left, you'll see an aerial image of the lot in the red square. And then on the right is an image from the front of the property on Granite Street. These were general mock-ups provided by the applicant. The one on the left would be from behind the building. So you see the back facade of the building, as well as featured 8 parking spots. The image on the right is the same, but just from an aerial view. So a variance must not be contrary to the public interest. The proposed development would increase the community's housing supply by redeveloping an underutilized lot within an area already served by existing public infrastructure. Infill development supports efficient use of municipal services, encourages reinvestment in established neighborhoods, and reduces the need for costly infrastructure expansion. The development standards for the R3 zoning district were adopted in 1978, long after most of Uptown Butte was developed under a much denser historic development pattern. As a result, many existing residential properties, including many multifamily structures, were built on smaller lots with setbacks and dimensions that do not conform to current zoning standards. Consequently, the existing neighborhood character reflects historic development patterns rather than larger lot sizes and setbacks now required by the zoning ordinance. Continued. The interests of adjacent property owners must be taken into consideration. A duplex is located directly west of the proposal, and granting a 5-foot setback along the shared property boundary would ultimately be affording the property owner a greater setback than what currently exists on the east side of the duplex. Sub 5-foot side yard setbacks is a common design element throughout the neighborhood. The required minimum lot area for an 8-plex is 16,500 square feet. The lot in question is 6,000 square feet, presenting potential impacts that require consideration. Though the substantial reduction in lot area and side yard setbacks is consistent with the established character of the neighborhood, the proposal has potential to increase development intensity, warranting careful consideration of any resulting impacts. The requested reductions in the east and west side yard setbacks would allow the building to be located closer to the adjacent property and the public right-of-way, resulting in minor encroachment into the vision clearance triangle, about 5 square feet. While similar setback conditions and encroachments exist throughout the surrounding Uptown neighborhood, protecting public safety remains a primary consideration. The vision clearance triangle is intended to preserve adequate sight distance at intersections to protect motorists and pedestrians. Maintaining unobstructed visibility reduces the potential for traffic conflicts and collisions by allowing users of the public right-of-way sufficient time to identify and react to approaching hazards. However, the subject property is located within an established historic street grid where the centerline alignment of Clark Street is offset by more than 50 feet at its intersection with Granite Street. As a result, the intersection does not function as a conventional 4-way crossing, requiring special consideration. To mitigate potential impacts, the board may consider requiring enhanced pedestrian and traffic safety improvements, such as crosswalks, ADA-compliant curb cuts, landscaping restrictions within the vision clearance triangle, pedestrian lighting, or other appropriate measures. This slide depicts many of the existing setbacks in the neighborhood. All of these were taken from the same block on Granite Street. The very first image with the red circle shows the duplex that is located directly west of the property. I'm guessing that setback is less than a foot. The 4 images on the right also depict what is commonly seen throughout the neighborhood. It is important to note, though, that all these structures were built prior to zoning implementation. Below are existing 3-story structures within the neighborhood. Street grade is also an important consideration. We all know Granite is a very steep and hilly area. Once again, all these structures were built prior to zoning implementation. This image depicts the vision clearance triangle. The measures we used our permitting software system to come up with those triangles. 1 inch equaled 10 feet, so 2.5 inches is the 25 feet that goes along Granite and Clark. So you can see there's about 5 square feet of the corner of the building within that triangle. On the right, you'll just see that unique intersection of Granite and Clark Street. These pictures depict multiple buildings that are within the vision clearance triangle within the neighborhood. So you can see the vacant lot on Granite and Clark Street, and then multiple examples within close proximity. We did want to depict, there is a building which is located at 740 West Granite Street. It presents a unique structural trait with the incorporation of an angled building corner. Though this building is still within the triangle, this design element has been used to avoid vision clearance encroachment. This could be a means for consideration. These three images were gathered recently. So since 2021, about the vision clearance triangle has been obstructed by a power pole and occasionally seasonal vegetation as well. The middle picture, you can see it's kind of degraded away, but the yellow corner curbing will have to be restored, which indicates 30 feet of prohibited parking areas on the corner. So that will be along both Clark and Granite Streets. And then the Public Works Department will ensure rehabilitation or replacement of the sidewalk during the commercial permit review process. So in conclusion of law, an 8-unit dwelling is a permitted use in the R3 zone and will provide residential infill development. Creation of additional housing is a goal of the Butte-Silver Bow Comprehensive Plan. The proposal is consistent with that of the Uptown Edge place type of the plan. The Uptown Edge blends more neighborhood-scale commercial uses with traditional multifamily development. The site design characteristics of this place type could include building facades built close to or at the sidewalk and property lines, emulating those in existence. Many of the adverse impacts associated with the proposal could most likely be mitigated with conditions of approval imposed by the board. Therefore, the proposal would not be contrary to the public interest with applicable conditions applied. Literal enforcement of the provisions of the title will result in unnecessary hardship. Hardship, as we know, defined by the Supreme Court, must feature a trait unique to the property, such as topographical, geological, or peculiar property shape. The hardship may not be a condition created by the applicant. So based on historic development patterns of Uptown Butte, the Planning Department and Zoning Board of Adjustment have always taken development patterns into consideration for these types of variances. Zoning was adopted in 1978. The prescribed development standards adopted within areas not formally zoned were not generally limited in available land for development. However, existing buildings within Uptown Butte, including this neighborhood, were developed at a much greater density, including smaller lots and smaller setbacks from the front, side, and rear property lines. Therefore, a majority of existing development with Uptown Butte is non-conforming with the existing code. This lot is a 60-foot by 100-foot, which is 6,000 square feet, which is large by Uptown standards, but substantially smaller than the 16,500 square foot minimum lot area required by the code for a new 8-unit multifamily development. Likewise, the parcel width is 60 feet, is less than the required 80-foot minimum. Although these dimensions do not currently meet zoning code requirements, they are consistent with the historic development pattern found throughout the neighborhood. Additionally, the property's corner location further limits the available buildable area due to increased setback and vision clearance requirements, creating a hardship when considering context-sensitive infill development. Oh, I forgot to put the picture down. Further encumbering the lot is the historic Missoula Gulch stormwater line. Historically, Missoula Gulch flowed as a surface drainage of stormwater collected from the west side of the Butte Hill and Mining District. The drainage course flowed down Clark Street north of Granite Street and veered easterly across the lot to continue down Clark Street south of Granite Street. The infrastructure poses challenges to the developer to develop on this lot. Prior to the early 20th century, the gulch was backfilled and a brick aqueduct was constructed to route stormwater underground. The current street gate was established to facilitate urban development, but this unique hardship does present the applicant with additional engineering analysis to assure that the infill development does not alter the existing aqueduct in any negative way. The picture is a 1891 Sanborn map depicting where the historic Missoula Gulch flowed. Given historical development patterns of the surrounding neighborhood and the physical constraints of the property, it may be reasonable to approve the requested variance to reduce the required side yard setbacks from 12 feet and 14 feet to 5 feet to allow for development on the existing non-conforming 6,000 square foot lot. These reductions would be consistent with the established character of the area while recognizing the unique constraints of the subject property. Since historical development pattern of Uptown Butte has been cited as a basis for supporting the proposed variance, planning staff believe it is appropriate to ensure that the design of the new construction is reasonably compatible with the historic character of the surrounding neighborhood. Accordingly, it is recommended that the applicant obtain a certificate of appropriateness from the Butte-Silver Bow Historic Preservation Board, ensuring architecturally compatible infill design of the development prior to the issuance of building permits. In conclusion, hardships are present. It may be reasonable to allow for the reduction in side yard setbacks, a reduction of the 80-foot frontage minimum, and a reduction in lot size requirements respectively. The proposal is consistent with existing density pattern in the neighborhood and Uptown Butte. The purpose of zoning is not to diminish or prevent the historic density of this area, but to guide compatible future development. The spirit of the ordinance shall be observed and substantial justice done. Public health, public safety, and general welfare must be protected and weighed against the rights of the applicant to develop the property in a way that may be suitable. If public interest can be protected, approval of a variance may be appropriate. There are many locations in Butte where 2 or even 3-story homes are constructed within 3 to 5 feet of each other. Zoning aims to promote a predictable pattern of development by ensuring that size, bulk, and scale of new developments are compatible with the established character of the surrounding neighborhood. Strict adherence to the current zoning standards would result in a building design that is less consistent with existing development. Nonetheless, the board must determine whether the construction of a 3-story 8-plex located 5 feet from the side property boundaries would be in keeping with historic development pattern of the block and the established neighborhood. 2 questions must be addressed. Would literal interpretation of the provisions of this chapter deprive the applicants of rights commonly enjoyed by other tracts in the same district? It would appear literal interpretation of the provisions of this chapter would deprive the applicant of rights commonly enjoyed by other tracts in the same district because the proposal emulates the historical density and development pattern of the neighborhood and that of Uptown Butte. The lot size, dimensions, and existing street configuration limit the site's ability to accommodate a multi-family residential development that complies with current zoning code. Would approving the variance grant the applicants any special privilege that is denied to this chapter to other land in the same zoning district? Approving the variances would not be granting the applicant special privilege that is otherwise denied to landowners in the same district. Rather, the requested relief would allow the subject property to be developed in a manner that is comparable to other dwellings in the neighborhood. This is an example of recent development in the neighborhood. So in 2014, variance application 14461 was approved to allow for development on the vacant lots located to the southeast corner of Granite and Clark, just to the east of the proposed location, providing the building with a reduced setback along Clark Street of 3 feet. The original approved proposal included the construction of 3 duplexes on 3 separate lots of record, all less than 3,000 square feet. Ultimately, that project did not carry through. However, the development that resulted in 1 duplex constructed within about 5 to 6 feet of the side property boundary along Clark Street. In conclusion, the variance request maintains the spirit of the zoning ordinance and meets the intent of the R3 zoning district requirements. Without reasonable cause to prohibit varying from the regulations in the R3 zone, denying this variance would be unfairly applying regulations to some property owners and not other in the same zone. It appears that this application were approved, the spirit of the zoning ordinance would not be compromised by the construction of the multifamily dwelling on a 6,000 square foot lot and be located within 5 feet of the east and west property line boundaries. This is just some additional information for consideration. According to the site plan, the applicant has sufficiently fulfilled state parking requirements by providing 8 off-street parking spaces. This is per the MCA 17-2-304. The 3-story building with a proposed height of 39 feet 3 inches is well below the R3 zone restriction of either 7 stories or 80 feet. The Butte-Silver Public Works Department found that the recommended conditions for pedestrian safety sufficient for the intersection. Since the proposal exceeds 2 units, it will trigger commercial project review upon permit submittal requiring code compliance with the Butte-Silver Planning, Public Works, Building, and Fire Departments. Recommended conditions of approval. The proposed development shall comply with all Butte-Silver Building, Fire, Public Works, and Health Department requirements. The proposal shall incorporate enhanced safety features to mitigate impacts of the vision clearance triangle encroachment, such as establishing crosswalks, incorporating ADA compliant curb cuts, integrating pedestrian safety lighting, prohibiting landscaping or decorative features exceeding 3 feet within the determined vision clearance triangle area. And the applicant shall obtain a certificate of appropriateness from the Butte-Silver Historic Preservation Board, ensuring architectural compatibility of the proposed infill design. And then we would also recommend requiring a structural engineer's design that accounts for the brick drainage channel and the design of the foundation in such a way that protects the integrity of the stormwater line. So in conclusion, final conclusion, the intent of the zoning is to prevent incompatible land uses or activities from impacting the health and safety of adjacent uses. The proposed development may not appear to be contrary to the public interest, and the parcel bears hardships owing to conditions unique to the property. Granting the variance provides relief from requirements enjoyed by others in the same district. The proposal will be required to obtain appropriate permits and meet all applicable building code standards. Staff recommendation is to approve the variance with appropriate conditions imposed. Alternatively, the board may deny the application based on findings of noncompliance or continue public hearing on the application with specific direction to staff or the applicant to supply additional information. Thank you.
Thank you, Aiden. Hope you get to catch your breath.
Thank you. I also just wanted to add, we did receive 3 letters in opposition. I did send those letters out, but I have hard copies here should anyone want to re-review them.
On that note, even though we're not in public comment yet, did everybody receive those and get an opportunity to see them? Okay, thank you. All right, do the board have any questions of staff at this time?
I have a couple.
Okay, please.
In the staff report, it stated that though the substantial reduction in lot area and side yard setbacks is consistent with the established character of the neighborhood, the proposal has the potential to increase development intensity, warranting careful consideration of any resulting impacts. And maybe I'm missing something, but I don't see where you've identified what the potential resulting impacts would be, and if, can you?
Yes, thank you for your question. With any new development, especially multifamily development, it will obviously add more pedestrian vehicle and parking circulation to the neighborhood. That's common anywhere you'll see these multifamily developments. So I think just an increase in maybe traffic, pedestrian movement, things like that. Were those the main things, I think?
Okay, I have another. Later in the report, it's stated that although these dimensions do not meet current zoning requirements, they are consistent with the historic lot pattern found throughout the neighborhood. Is that relative to other eightplexes that are in the neighborhood, or duplexes, quadplexes?
This neighborhood, there's not many examples of necessarily eightplexes. There are multiple duplexes, fourplexes, and sixplexes. There's also an apartment building. What's it called? The big one. The Mullen apartment building, which houses multiple apartments. And all these seem to be built on substandard lots that were in existence prior to zoning.
Okay. By the code, it's an eightplex requires 16,500 square foot minimum. Do you know what's the square foot minimum for a sixplex, fourplex, duplex?
Yes, we have. We have a table in our code that I can read
Okay.
you off how we determine lot size minimums for multifamily developments.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. McKinn. So a standard size lot per our ordinance is 6,000 square feet. For a duplex, you would need 7,500. So up to 8 units, you add 1,500 square feet per unit up to the 8th unit.
Okay.
Beyond that, it's 400 square feet.
Okay. And I think my last question is in regards to the statement that it appears that public health, safety, and the general welfare of the surrounding property owners may not be impacted. But may goes both ways. What are the potential impacts that have been identified as to public health, safety, and general welfare?
Mr. Chairman, Member McEwen, in looking at the health and safety impacts of development, zoning is intended to preserve light, air, and circulation of those things around a building. Consistent with the existing development pattern, light and air would be infringed upon with the addition of density in this area. There also is the potential for public health concerns, in particular the spread of fire and the ability to respond to fire. What we would consider in this particular instance is that many of the structures at this density pattern in the neighborhood do not meet the current zoning ordinance. They also do not meet the current standards of the International Building Code, which is adopted as the year 2021. So the approach or the availability of modern building practices and the reduction of setbacks would allow for the incorporation of building constraints, including firewalls that are established, and continuing to maintain a larger setback than is evident with other buildings in the neighborhood to continue to allow for fire to access the, in particular, the west side of the building, also to allow the neighboring property access to their east side of their building, the allowance for air and light to enter into that well that would be created by this construction. So you are attempting to both provide for the utilization of the lot while also maintaining the air and light and the protection from fire or other public health transport through the establishment of and incorporation of the proposed setbacks.
One more, and this maybe is more a comment or maybe more directed towards the applicant, but, given the square footage requirements that were just discussed, this exceeds that by 10,500 feet. It substantially exceeds for even a duplex. I'm having a tough time seeing how this is not a hardship created by the applicant when it could be a construction of a duplex or fourplex that's closer to conformity with the code. You can answer if needed, but if I need to direct that at the applicant, I will.
Mr. Chairman, Member McEwen, staff would not respond to that question. I believe that that is a question that can be provided to the applicant during their opportunity to respond.
Thank you. That's all I have.
Thank you. Any other members have questions? Ms. Adams?
You okay? Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I was just curious, we're on the cusp of adopting the new zoning regulations, and I know there are changes to the minimum lot size. Would this be allowed under those new zoning code rules?
Chairman Coe, Member Adams, I don't have the new setback requirements memorized for that particular area, but in the comprehensive plan, as it discusses the uptown edge, which is intended to be less dense or less intense in its realm of development than the uptown core itself, which is essentially the central business district where we stand now. It is intended to allow for moderate density as compared to the central business district, where you would see heights as high as 80 feet, which are allowed currently in the R3 zone, but we may be looking at reducing those heights in the uptown edge place type to achieve the intent of the comp plan, which is to reduce the concentration of density outside of the uptown core, where we would be looking at a maximum height of approximately 45 feet. I do not have the side yard setbacks memorized, so I cannot speak to those under the current draft. However, the draft or the comprehensive plan does require us to look at the existing development pattern of the historic uptown district and to try to retain the integrity of the existing architectural and urban design outcomes, which would be very small or shallow setbacks, lot sizes that are more closely related to the existing 3,000 square foot plats rather than the 6,000 square foot lots that are prevalent throughout the entirety of the zoned area of the community. And also ensuring that buildings are built along the sidewalks on all sides to maintain activity along the sidewalk to encourage pedestrian activity and walking within the district from the uptown edge into the uptown core where the height of commerce would take place. The district would also be allowing for a mix of uses, not just residential, but also complementary local commercial options available to those living in those areas.
Thank you, Ms. Crane. Any other questions? I do have a comment on that topic, but I'm going to save for our discussion. I think it'd be more appropriate at that time. So, with no other questions, would the applicant please come up, state your name, and tell us why you want to do this and what's going on?
Thank you. I was almost loud enough. All right. Well, thank you very much for consideration, and thank you for the considerate questions. My name's Mike Spar. I'm actually Montana native, Missoula resident. My wife's family's from Butte. My family's from Anaconda, but we were both born and raised in Missoula. One of the reasons we want to do this is obviously to help provide more affordable housing throughout the state. We've seen the impacts in Missoula considerably, and now the increase in housing costs here in Butte. We purchased the land several years ago with the intent of building a multifamily property, but with current financing rates and other restrictions, it just didn't seem economically feasible. Thankfully, a program from the state of Montana Board of Housing actually solved some of the problems for us, and with this given density and with their loan program, it actually penciled out to make it worthwhile for us to try to provide additional affordable housing. So I did share with a few members a letter from the Montana Board of Housing. It's a commitment letter. We went through a competitive bid process, and we were approved a discounted rate loan, but along with that, we guarantee 30 years of capped rental prices. So it's providing affordable housing and the density infill that's desperately needed in the state. I believe Butte alone is short 200 units, and we would provide essentially a percentage of those units. So, thank you. And I'm happy to answer any questions that you or anyone in the audience has.
Excellent, thank you very much. Mike, would you like to restate your question for the applicant?
After your comments, in your proposal just now, I think I'm having even more of a hard time seeing how this is not a hardship created by the applicant. I mean, and correct me if I'm wrong, but it sounds like the number of units has increased due to the loan that you were able to get. Secondly, to follow that up, have you considered fourplex, duplex, sixplex that's more in conformity with the code?
Okay, thank you for the question. Essentially, the increased density requirements actually makes it economically feasible with the rent restrictions. So the loan itself doesn't have any limitation on or requirements on number of units. The number of units was chosen, which actually makes it feasible to provide. So the plan is a 3-story building, two bedroom apartments on first floor, second floor, and 4 1-bedroom on the top floor. It's not, I would say the unit design that we chose in the building design was the reason for the 8 units, not the loan itself.
Thank you for that. I guess I didn't get an answer to the first part of my question is, how is this not a hardship that's created by the applicant?
Well, the hardship, as reported by the staff alone, any building adhering to the zoning with the 12 plus foot setbacks and only a single unit on a 6,000 square foot lot would limit the ability to provide the density needed desperately in Butte, especially in uptown Butte, or more affordable housing. So the building envelope with the current zoning would severely prohibit building anything or meeting any of the density needs in the area.
I appreciate that. I do think the standard that we're dealing with here, though, is hardship to the applicant. And what you've just discussed, to me, sounds more like hardship to the community, which I appreciate, the density and the need for housing. The question is, what is the hardship to the applicant?
I might, I hadn't thought about that. So essentially the inability to utilize the lot to its best ability to provide affordable housing and help meet density requirements in the area. So it would make the lot, unable to develop anything of worth, in my opinion.
Thank you for that. Just for the record, I don't think that that is an adequate response or justification for the hardship at this point.
Okay. Anybody else have questions right now? The applicant? All right, seeing none from them, I thought I had one, if I can remember what it is. Oh, there were conditions that were presented.
Yes.
Are those amenable to you, should this pass?
So the conditions presented, crosswalks, ADA, ultimately the curbs have to be redone. If you saw those photos, they're going to have to be, new curbs are going to have to be provided anyway. The pedestrian safety lighting, I don't know exactly what that means, but definitely open to consideration of whatever's recommended. The certificate of appropriateness, we are not located within the urban development district, or I think it's a block west of the current urban development district that is or does have requirements of design review. So I'd need to understand better what that means, certificate of appropriateness, but our intent was to actually try to better match the Butte landscape with the brick facade, but also with modern touches, metal balconies with brick facade. So a touch of modern, but still adhering to the Butte brick design. And then structural engineering foundation, stormwater line, of course, we definitely want to ensure that we're compliant. I did speak with Northwest Energy, and in the photos they showed that they'd relocated those power poles onto the corner of the property. They told me that their power poles are 40 feet. They set them 10 feet deep. My assumption is that a foundation below the frost line for essentially a slab construction will not exceed the depth that they're putting the power poles, so we probably have little to no risk of interfering with that water line, but we would certainly hire the structural engineer and go through that. And I think crosswalks, ADA curbs, pedestrian safety lighting. Limit on landscaping, no problem. So to answer your question, we would be happy to comply with the conditions, but would need to know more about pedestrian safety lighting and certificate of appropriateness and what that actually means.
All right, thank you. Any other questions, the applicant, before we open up the public hearing? All right, thank you. Well, you may come back up.
Okay, thank you.
All right, at this point, we'll open the public hearing portion of this. Is there anybody who would like to speak in favor of this project at this time? All right. Is there anybody that would like to speak in opposition of the project? All right. Come on up, state your name and address, and tell us what you have to say.
Yes, my name is Rosemary Garvey, and I live at 716 and 718 West Granite. I have an upstairs apartment and then a downstairs apartment. I guess my main concern is that I moved into my upstairs apartment in 1985, and that lot is still the same as it was then. It's completely full of weeds. The sidewalk is in horrible shape. They don't shovel or anything. So it's really been a hardship on the neighborhood all those years. And then all of a sudden, they want to put a duplex there. And I guess one of my main concerns is parking. Thank God I have a garage, because I would not be able to park in front of my house. And just as it is now, because we have a duplex to the west of me, and there's it's averaged for every person that lives in a house to have 2 or more cars. And that's my concern. And then, of course, you know, the blockage of the alleys. And I guess I would like to see the lot turned into, you know, a nice lot. And I don't know how they got that to look so nice, but it isn't like that. And it's a mess. It really is a mess. And I'm sure the other neighbors will, you know, agree with that. But that's my concern. I would, and also the size. You know, there's no more than two-story places in our historic neighborhood. And the house next to me is just like this to me. And I talked to him today, and he's going to tear that down and build a one unit, hopefully. And I think but it was under historic preservation, so he's having a hard time dealing with that. But like I said, it's just like this to me. And it had a fire in, I believe, 2022, well, a few years back. And I was hoping it would be a total loss, which it wasn't. And I would have bought the land and expanded my yard. But like I said, my main concern is that, yeah, we do need new development, but not an eightplex apartment house. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Chairman, my name is Holly McCammon, and I live at 715 West Granite. It's across the street and the closest house to the park that they've improved for children somewhat recently. So I felt, listening to the whole presentation, I was really interested in everything. I really appreciate affordable housing being added and a lot of the things that were brought up. And what interested me was when it's actually the policy of the committee to make variances when there's already a density in the neighborhood. To me, that's the biggest argument against it, because we have that side of the block is even more condensed than the side of the block I'm on, and it's so people dense, so population dense, that there's always been a problem with just so many people, lots of noise, lots of parking issues, all of that sort of thing. So to me, to take something that's even bigger than what it's supposed to be and say, well, we can do this because we did it before. The ideas of changing that zoning laws to where they are now is a much better idea than when they built it. So I feel like adding something that big with so many people and so much more pressure in the neighborhood would really be a detriment to those of us that already live in the neighborhood. That intersection is a disaster in the winter because we're on the hill there, and it's really hard to cross there because of the offset corners already. So making that more difficult would definitely be a problem, you know, in the neighborhood. And I just feel that even though I would love to see something improve there, you know, it's not doing any good as a vacant lot. I think that something that's that big, like Rosie said, it's going to be taller than any of the buildings around and bigger than most of them as well. I'd love to see something that would fit in the neighborhood like we're talking about, but just not be that big and maybe not that many people, like Commissioner McEwen brought up. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Does anybody else have any comments in opposition?
Mr. Chair, thank you. And board, thank you for hosting this session. I'm Butch Gerbrandt at 412 West Broadway. I'm also the commissioner for District 10, within which this lot lies. I was a civil engineer in drainage subdivisions for 10 years, and then I taught at Montana Tech for 23 years in environmental and civil engineering. Great job. I love Montana Tech. I see that at least one of my students is on your board here, so that pleases me. I'm here, of course, to address the variance request for the eightplex. Several of my constituents living in the 700 block of West Granite called me with concerns. One of them identified the lot as the corner lot with all the tall weeds, so I was able to find it right away. My constituents had several concerns, but all feared the increase in parking in the immediate neighborhood. I've included in a handout, which I passed out to you, 3 photos that I took yesterday at 7:30 p.m. Looks like this. So the first photograph on the left is the 700 block the south side of Granite at the lot of interest. So looking at the pickup truck in the front there, just to the left of that is the lot that we're talking about. The second photograph on the right is Clark Street, just east of the lot of interest. So you see the lot of interest there on the right, and the parked up street curb there. The final photograph on the bottom is the 800 block of West Granite, so just one block west, and that area is always totally parked up in the evenings. The planning analysis rightfully points out that 8 off-road parking spaces are included in the design, 1 each for the number of units proposed. So let me ask you some questions though. How many of you have only 1 vehicle per family? My family ended up with 3 vehicles, including my brother-in-law's beater Prius. Fortunately, we have a 3-bay garage, only one of which is filled with sundry detritus. How many of you have friends that visit? How many of you have family that visits and stays overnight? I realize this is not a zoning violation for the proposal, but parking is a problem in the neighborhood surrounding the lot in question and will be exacerbated by an 8-plex added to the mix. Thanks to Planner Dennehy and the staff for penning the staff analysis of the variance request, and that's basically what we saw in the presentation. The analysis was very thorough and articulate, and I appreciate the time and effort put into the analysis. Let me say also that I am a proponent of additional housing in Butte, especially infilling, as long as it is appropriate for the neighborhood. That said, I have a number of comments directed at portions of the analysis, and I'm going to list them by page. They really don't have a page number, but I think you can probably follow along. So page 2 of the analysis you will notice that the staff has been so kind as to prepare a motion to approve for you. Right? However, 3 alternatives instead of complete acceptance are listed, and I'm going to read them to you. Alternative 1, you can deny the application with the recommendation findings. 2, you can approve the application with any additional conditions. Or 3, continue the public hearing on the application with specific direction to the staff or the applicant to supply additional information or to address specific items. And I would suggest that number 3 would allow suggestions for the developer to consider, for instance, a 4-plex. You have seen that the site plan includes 8 off-street parking spaces. If the apartment was reduced to a 4-plex, there would be 4 less parking spaces and much more room for a site plan that better fits zoning codes. The variance request that concerns me most is the vision clearance triangle, and it's on page 7, and we've seen it on the overheads here. So if you would refer to the second sheet in the handout that I gave you, and this is the same image that was shown earlier. So, as was explained, this triangle is produced by starting at the corner of the lot and moving with the blue lines here 25 feet to the left or to the west, and then 25 feet downward to the south, and then a diagonal line is drawn between the two 25 feet places, and that is the vision line that is okay with the zoning ordinance. All right? Now, the staff has said that only 5 feet of building extends into that area. As you can see, the little orange triangle there. This area of intrusion really has nothing to do with compliance. What matters is the distance along the property line. Using the scale on the drawing, I found a new site distance, and I put it on your diagram there. That's the black line, okay? I drew that in, and that is with the existing floor plan, that would be the new site variance distance. And now, instead of 25 feet horizontally and 25 feet vertically, we have 15 feet, okay? So this is the time given for vehicles coming, let's say, from Granite Street, driving east, to see a vehicle or a pedestrian and take appropriate measures. This is a safety issue. Here's a possible solution. Say the project was downsized to a sixplex. Then the two northernmost parking spaces, which you see just a piece of them on the image, they would be gone, and the whole structure could be brought down by 10 feet further south, and now you would be back to the original and the zoning site distance. There's been some discussion, quite a bit of discussion really, about unnecessary hardships. And I want to turn to page 8 in the analysis.
Mr. Durant, we typically leave about 3 minutes for comments, so if you could kindly wrap it up.
I'm near the end, and this analysis is quite extensive, and so allow me to take a little bit more time. I'm about through. But going on page 8, at the bottom of the page, the provisions for unnecessary hardship are listed, and I want to read them. They were all already on the overhead. Unnecessary hardship, as defined by the Montana Supreme Court, must result from a condition unique to the property, such as a peculiar property shape, a topographical feature, or geological trait. All right? That's the definition that comes in the handout. So let's look at those. The first one, the shape. The shape of the lot is a rectangle, right? No shape is really less peculiar than a rectangle. Most housing structures are also rectangular. So a rectangular housing footprint fits in a rectangular lot, not an unnecessary hardship. The second statement there is a topographical feature. This would be like a granite rock outcrop or a stream on the site. Looking through the weeds there, I didn't see any one of those. The lot is fairly flat, sloping slightly to the south, and looks like there aren't any topographical feature to produce an unnecessary hardship. The last one, the geological trait, I'm not sure what that means. Is that like quicksand or a copper vein extending to the surface? I'm not sure, but I suggest that the only unnecessary hardship of suggesting a less ambitious building is the returns to the investors. What would I recommend? I'm about to finish here. I would recommend the conditions of approval listed in the staff analysis on page 12. They are excellent. Thank you for that, planning staff. Secondly, I recommend that this board suggests to the developer that downsizing the project could enhance compliance with zoning and address the neighbors' fears of congestion. So thank you for hearing me out, and God bless you for taking on hard issues like this.
Thank you, Mr. Durant. Are there any other comments in opposition? Director Crane, did you have a comment?
Yes, I was notified the individuals who sent in letters would like them read just to assure they are on public record. So we're gonna go ahead and just read those 3 letters.
Absolutely.
All right. This is addressed July 14th, 2026, from Sherry and John Couthard. Objection to the proposed multifamily dwelling on the described property. 6,000 square foot parcel is located on the southwest corner of Granite and Clark Street. An 8-plex apartment would have a substantial negative impacts to the residents of the 600, 700, and 800 blocks on Granite Street. A 3-story building with the proposed setbacks would negatively impact the ability for drivers traveling north on Clark Street to see oncoming traffic traveling east on Granite Street. This problem will further be impaired by allowing only 6 off-street parking stalls and permitting on-street parking in front of the proposed structure. The problem is magnified since Clark Street was constructed on Missoula Gulch and does not have a conventional 4-way intersection. The lot size of the proposed 8-plex is 64% smaller than the required 16,500 square foot lot required by Section 175460 of the Butte-Silver Municipal Code. By allowing the proposed offset to build this type of structure, the historical architect of Granite Street will be compromised. Granite Street is an important part of the Butte Historical District and a corridor from the Uptown to Montana Tech campuses, as well as part of the Butte Historical Tours, which highlight the unique history and architecture to people visiting Butte. It is my feeling that an 8-plex would not serve the current residents of Granite Street because it would lack adequate parking, cause increased traffic issues on the corners of Clark and Granite Streets. The proposal does not address the location of garbage receptacles, which will be significantly impacted by the proposed off-street parking lots and the current direction of garbage collection, east to west, requiring the receptacles to be placed in front of the parking area and will be forced more on-street parking on Clark and Granite Streets. It is my opinion that the lot is very suitable for a duplex with proper offsets and designed to reflect the historical architecture of the neighborhood. There are more suitable locations in Butte for this type of residential structure to address future housing shortages.
Mr. Chairman and members of the board, this is a letter from Lori Vandell, 806 West Granite Street here in Butte. The subject is the formal opposition to variance request VAR 2616. Dear members of the Zoning Board of Adjustment, I am writing to formally oppose variance request VAR 2616 submitted by Michael Spar for the property located at the corner of Granite and Clark Street. The applicant is requesting numerous deviations from the Butte-Silver Municipal Code, including increased residential density beyond the R3 zoning district, reductions to required front side and side street side setbacks, a reduced parking area setback, a parking ratio of only 1 space per dwelling unit, and an increase in the maximum building height from 25 feet to 42 feet. Taken together, these are not minor adjustments. They represent a substantial departure from the zoning standards established to protect the character, safety, and livability of our neighborhood. Granting this request would undermine both the intent of the zoning ordinance and expectations of the residents who have relied upon these regulations. The application does not meet the legal standard for a variance. Under MCA 762323, a variance may be granted only when strict enforcement of the zoning regulations would create an unnecessary hardship due to unique circumstances affecting the property, and only when the variance is not contrary to the public interest. Based on the information presented, the application fails to satisfy these requirements. The applicant has not demonstrated that any unique physical characteristic of the property prevents reasonable use under the existing zoning regulations. There is no evidence that the lot possesses unusual topography, shape, size, or other physical limitations that would justify relief from the ordinance. Instead, the requested variances appear necessary only because the applicant has chosen a development that exceeds what the property can accommodate under the existing zoning requirements. A self-created hardship resulting from a proposed design is not the type of hardship contemplated by Montana law and should not serve as the basis for granting multiple variances. The proposal is contrary to the public interest. The proposed building is significantly larger and more intensive than the surrounding development. Increasing both the building height and density while reducing setbacks will produce a structure that is out of scale with the historic character of the historic uptown neighborhood. These regulations exist to ensure that new development is compatible with existing homes and preserves the character of established residential areas. In addition, the combination of increased height and reduced setbacks raises legitimate concerns regarding visibility and traffic safety at the intersection of Granite and Clark Streets. These impacts should be carefully considered before allowing development that substantially exceeds the standards applicable to every other property owner. The parking variances will harm the surrounding neighborhood. Residents of the 6, 7, and 800 blocks of Granite Street, as well as the adjoining side streets, already experience a shortage of available on-street parking. Reducing the required parking ratio while simultaneously increasing residential density will inevitably place additional demand on neighboring streets. The resulting parking congestion will directly affect nearby homeowners and visitors, creating an ongoing burden that would have or could have been avoided by requiring compliance with the existing parking standards. Approval would set a harmful precedent. The board's responsibility is to apply the zoning ordinance consistently and only grant variances when the strict legal criteria have been met. Approving this application despite the absence of a demonstrated hardship would establish a precedent suggesting that zoning standards may be waived simply because a larger or more profitable project is desired. That is not the purpose of the variance process. The zoning regulations were adopted to balance private development rights with public interest. Residents who purchased homes and invested in this neighborhood have done so with reasonable expectation that these standards would be enforced fairly and consistently. For these reasons, I respectfully request that the board deny variance request 2616 in its entirety. This applicant has not demonstrated the unnecessary hardship required by law, and the requested variances would be contrary to the public interest by adversely affecting neighborhood character, traffic safety, and parking availability. Thank you for your careful consideration of this matter and your continued service to the residents of Butte-Silver Bow. Respectfully, Lori Vandell.
Sorry, getting situated here. The final letter is from Mitzi Rosalind. This is in regards to variance 2616. Dear board members, I am writing in opposition to the variance request of variance 2616. My concerns are regarding relief from municipal code requirements for minimal lot size, minimal lot width, and vision clearance for a corner lot. It is because the prominent wish to build a 3-story eightplex at this location that relief is being sought. As a consequence, the size of the proposed building has direct bearing on the decision before you and must be a consideration in your deliberations. Conceptual plans provided in the application document show a 40 by 50 foot building with 2 entry bump outs. The building height is to be just under 40 feet. The footprint size is not inconsistent with that of multifamily dwellings in the neighborhood, but the building height certainly is, with a single relatively minor exception in the immediate vicinity within 2 blocks. All multifamily apartments and duplexes are 2-story, all brick with flat roofs except for modern buildings on the opposite side of Clark Street. These elements, including their height, are character defining in the historic neighborhood, as are the numerous single-family dwellings that remain much in character with their origins, together making this place we live in a consistent reminder of the town's rich history and relatively quiet, walkable community. The variance relief that the proponent seeks will enable Granite Heights to introduce a large, highly visible, non-historic element into the heart of our neighborhood, no matter its planned design. I acknowledge that the proponent's conceptual design has placed the building's main front wall on the same plane of historic residents in the neighborhood, that the side lot width allow for both construction and maintenance without being so narrow as to mimic historic placement, which can be difficult for immediate neighbors, and that 8 off-street parking spaces are a part of the plan. These features, while commendable, do not offset the impact of constructing a high-density residential complex with this 40-foot height that will dwarf not only the surrounding buildings, but those on the adjoining blocks. Further, there is absolutely no question that a consequence of the 8-unit construction will be added pressure to on-street parking already at a premium. To be blunt, the 800 block of West Granite is full as is the south side of the 700 block, the north side of the 600 block, and the east and west side of the 100 block of North Clark. particularly when Montana Tech is in session. Adding a new demand for on-street parking estimated at 5 spaces at a minimum, including space for placement of trash cans or a dumpster, will exacerbate difficulties with residing or renting existing properties in the neighborhood. Last, I am concerned with any additional impediment to navigating the intersection of Granite and Clark. The suggested mitigation for granting a variance to the vision clearance triangle corner, with the exception of limitation on landscaping, are specifically made with the safety of pedestrians in mind. However, with the inevitable increase on street parking, I suspect the sight distance of vehicles stopping on Clark at the south side of the intersection will be impeded. Traffic on Granite, a major arterial, is noticeably fast from both directions when approaching the bottom of the gulch, making turning onto Granite from Clark, particularly going east, tricky. Already vehicles are parked near the southeast corner of the intersection, and with this development will be parked right up to the intersection. That vehicle safety issue is not readily addressed by what is proposed, nor by what options might be available for vehicular traffic along an intersection and arterial. Sincerely, Mitzi Rosslin, 815 West Granite.
All right, thank you for reading those. It's never easy. When we have opposition to an issue, the applicant gets an opportunity to respond to those. Would you like to respond to any of those comments?
Sure.
Okay.
All right, thank you. I didn't write down the various comments, but there were a couple concerns mentioned that I wanted to address. The vision clearance triangle seems to be a repeated comment, and actually you have another slide, if you could pull it up, that showed, yes, actually this would be a good one. The actual place that cars pull up on North Clark Street, on the right-hand side next to the Butte Commons, there is 8-foot sidewalks on the street side on Granite Street, and there's 8-foot wide sidewalks on Clark Street. And so that adds another 8 feet. Furthermore, the other slide that you showed with the picture of Northwest Energy's relocation of their power pole, the proposed location of the corner of the building is actually back further from the sidewalk from that power pole. So the only impedance of vision is the new power pole that Northwest Energy provided, and the building setback proposed of 10 feet at that corner is actually behind the power poles. And so with the 8-foot sidewalk plus the 10-foot setback, it's actually 18 feet back from the side of the road. And my wife and I have actually parked on North Clark, looked beyond the power pole, and we can see 1 block down Granite Street to the next street. And so as far as vision impedance, I don't think that is accurate. There was a suggestion by the gentleman, and thank you for the thorough review, of why not a 4-plex or why not a 6-plex. The actual building height of a 6-plex would
Sir,
sorry.
Talking to the mic so that everybody...
Yep. So the gentleman asked why not a 4-plex or why not a 6-plex. The actual building would still be 3-level if a 6-plex. The original plan that we were considering was 2 2-bedroom units per level, and we chose to change the mix of units to better accommodate the residents in the area. So whether or not they work at the hospital or they attend school at Tech, we would be able to provide more housing. And so that was the reason why we changed that. So it would have been the exact same building footprint, but that was the reason for that. It was mentioned several times there was 5 and 6 off-street parking, but our plan actually includes 8. And the standard is 8.5 or 18.5 feet by 8 feet is the the standard for parking spots, and our plan clearly includes enough for those 8 spots with a 20-foot central alleyway, as indicated on the right-hand side. And there is still setback from the alley to accommodate for parking, and right now there's actually Northwest Energy poles on the corner near where we are planning the stormwater drain. So there is already structures in those areas that we clear. And so there is plenty of area for the garbage. There is not vision impedance from the triangle, and there is more parking than what was reported by the opposition. And then also it was mentioned of a max building height of 25 feet, but during the staff's presentation, the R3 zoning allows building up to 80 feet. This proposal is half what that allowance provides. So, I think that's all I wrote down. Oh, and I know my answer on the hardship was weak. I'm new to this process, so I don't know a lot of the terminology, but the gentleman mentioned the 3 conditions for hardships, and one of them is geological trait that he mentioned, which was presented by the staff, and one of those geological traits is that underwater storm drain that has to be engineered and considered for in any building. I believe this lot was platted in the 1800s, and the staff has shared with me that nothing has ever been built here. And so it's about time that we utilize this property and provide the much needed affordable housing that Butte demands. So thank you very much for your consideration. And
Mr.
thank you
Chairman,
all.
I ask a question?
Excuse me?
I don't think we typically do. Do we do that, Julia?
It's okay, if not, I can make my comments
Yeah.
in our discussion.
Yeah, we don't usually have a discussion. Okay. All right. Thank you. And if I'll ask one more time, since oh no, we're already past that. Sorry. I will close the public hearing. Sorry, it's getting long and there's a lot going on outside. It's distracting. Anyway, with that, I'd like to have a board discussion. Mr. McEwen, you indicated you wanted to say something. Would you like to start?
Sir, as I kind of alluded to in the questioning, I'm having a hard time with the applicant's hardship. I certainly am sympathetic, and I think the rest of the board is as well, to the needs of housing and housing density and providing housing, as the applicant said, for traveling nurses and such. But our job as the board is not to solve the housing crisis. Our job is to enforce the code and the laws as handed down by the Montana Supreme Court. And the Montana Supreme Court, as stated in public comment, states that a hardship is defined by the Montana Supreme Court and must result from a condition unique to the property, such as a peculiar property shape, topographical feature, or geological trait. This quality must preclude the applicant's ability to place a structure on the property in compliance with the zoning ordinance. The hardship may not result from a condition created by the applicants. I have not heard tonight anything that leads me to believe other than this is a condition created by the applicants. The applicant, in his rebuttal to the public comment, stated topographical, but I don't see how that prevents this from being, this project being shrunk down to a 2-plex, 4-plex that is closer to complying with the code. I mean, the fact of the matter is we're 10,500 feet over, which is a significant amount. I will be voting no on this project, but would encourage the applicant to reassess their plans and come back with a unit that is smaller and closer to conformity.
Thank you, Mr. McEwen. Any other comments from board members?
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, I think on this one, I think see Member McEwen's comments, concerns. I think I also see the staff's recommendation for approval with conditions as well. Where I'm struggling, the parking, the density, we get that a lot, and I don't think there is any sort of development in Uptown Butte, just with the nature of Butte, that is going to, positively impact parking. It's going to be a negative impact, whether it's a single-family residence, a duplex, a fourplex, an eightplex. It's just to what degree it impacts it. I think maybe to your comment, Member McEwen, I agree, but I can also kind of see that there's a very good possibility that if it was a duplex or fourplex, the applicant would be right back in front of us asking for a variance request. Maybe not for all this same stuff, but some of it. I do think the setback requirement, especially for development in Uptown Butte, triggers a lot of variances because I do think it's very constrictive. Whether it's closer to the variance or not, I guess I personally feel, I'm not sure that's kind of in the purview of the board to try to determine on what's close enough to be comfortable with. To me, it kind of seems like it's either it meets the variance or it doesn't. But personally, I'm not sure I would entertain a proposal of a duplex or a fourplex that was closer, but still needed a variance request, because I think the same issues are there. It's just to what degree the issues are there. I don't know. I'm not sure I'm ready one way or another, but that's my thoughts.
Anybody else?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I guess I tend to agree with Mr. Craig. I understand the concerns that have been brought forward. And again, parking is never going to be less if we want development in this community. They're providing 8 spaces on site. It's a lot that has been, sounds like, vacant forever, full of weeds. It's a eyesore. I think in the new zoning code, I couldn't quite find it either, but I believe these minimum lot sizes are going to change. And I do think it would be permitted under the new zoning code, I believe. The setbacks are within what's shown in the neighborhood. The height is within the guidelines for the neighborhood, even under future changes. I do understand neighbors' concerns, but I generally see this as a positive for the community.
Thank you. Mr. McEwen, looks like you have something to say.
Yeah, if I may respond and just thank you, Mr. Chair. I appreciate the comments by my fellow board members. I think we're still skipping the criteria that a hardship has to be presented. In the past, when we've dealt with hardships from property owners, there have been boulders in the way where they haven't been able to build in the area that would be within the code. There is no physical hardship present here, and there's no hardship that hasn't been created by the applicant. If we're going to follow the law, this should be denied. The applicant has not presented any hardship that is within the parameters set by the Supreme Court, and I haven't heard any hardship at all, other than financial.
Thank you, Mr. McEwen. I appreciate the analysis of the hardship. I don't fully agree with you, but I agree with you on a lot of the topics. I think the lot size itself presents a hardship. I did spend some time doing an analysis, and if we did a strict interpretation of the rules that where the applicant would not come to us, you could only build a single-family home, and it would actually not conform with the historic nature of the area. It'd be set much farther back than all the rest of the houses in the area. It would look a little bit different. So there's that part. Moving on to looking at setbacks and area, and we've thrown around the concept of historical consistency in the area. If you go 2 blocks up to the large apartment building up there, that is built with 0 setbacks, right on the corner, on a corner lot. And I understand that it was built probably before zoning, but it does not meet the vision triangle, but it is really not a lot different than what is being asked here. The height and the number of units, other than the 6,000 square foot lot triggering that, are immaterial to me. What I think we need to be focused on, and Aidan, would you mind bringing up the list of the variances, which does fit in a lot of what you've been talking about. What's at question today is we've got 4 variances in front of us that we're looking to approve. And when I did an analysis of the new zoning code and the comprehensive plan and how this would fit in, the only one that popped is the vision triangle. So, when the new zoning code, at least as it sits today, is adopted, this would likely be close to being approved and only come through on the vision triangle. So those are part of my consideration in this, and I don't know how I'm voting yet. So. Any other comments, follow-ups?
I have a question, Mr. Chairman. I wonder if staff could provide us with a little bit of guidance on Mr. McEwen's question about hardship, and we can argue whether there's a hardship or not, but it's my understanding that it could also be approved if it's not contrary to the public interest. Do you want to provide a little bit of guidance there?
Mr. Chairman, Member Adams, in the context of the Uptown District, the current zoning ordinance in Butte-Silver Bow requires a 6,000 square foot lot minimum for development on the Butte Flat as well as the Uptown District. The majority, if not most, lots in the historic district are legally non-conforming lots. The history of evaluation of variances in the historic district points to language that discusses the existing urban fabric as being a consideration when considering a variance in the district. Because there is no ability to replicate the existing design or urban fabric in the district with utilization of the code without varying from it. So that in and of itself would create a outcome that could be considered contrary to the public interest. We have seen through the public comment periods that are affiliated with the comprehensive planning process that the public desires compatible infill in the district. They desire walkable neighborhoods. They desire buildings built on the street. They want to return to the urban fabric and the urban rhythm that has been customary of the Butte Historic District over time. And for that reason, when evaluating whether or not a variance in the district is appropriate, the historic building pattern has been considered. Because the code itself creates a hardship when trying to create compatible infill that would not detract from the historic fabric. And I think that that is evident with other examples of projects in the district that do not meet the appropriateness of the historic preservation of the district itself. For that reason, staff made recommendation that the certificate of appropriateness from the Historic Preservation Commission would also be a companion to the issuance of a variance. And that is very specific because the R3 zone, and we have heard through public comment that the R3 zone allows for up to 80 feet in height. 80 feet would be out of comportment with the district itself. But also the design, the height, the bulk, the height, bulk, and shape of the building, the formulation of the window patterns. There are all of these design elements that are pretty essential to actually making the infill project meet the intent of alleviating that impact on the public's interest, which is consistency in form. So that would be my response to that.
I guess I'm having a thought, and Julie will probably shoot me daggers or something just for saying this, but it appears right now in the fact that we're going through a zoning change that our comprehensive plan is in conflict with our current zoning, and that's why we're seeing such an influx of these types of issues coming to this board. That's just an arching comment. You don't need to respond to that. Any other comments from board members or discussion? Any suggestions on if we want to? We can delay this. We do have the opportunity to delay this and make a decision. If we want to get more information, we can and make a decision. What's the feeling of the group?
I don't want to delay it any further. I feel like there's been a lot of discussion that has happened. The only reason that I would say to delay it would be, I don't know when the new zoning codes will be in place. That would be the only reason I could see delaying it, in case that would change how we vote or whether he needs to even apply for variances. I guess since I haven't commented, I will say the over 10,000 square feet has bothered me since I read it the first time, and I'm kind of stuck on that. And so that's my contention for, and it's how I'm going to vote, I think, is probably based on that overage. So I'm with Member McEwen on that, as well as the hardships. So I'm not making a motion to delay.
Would somebody like to make a motion to some effect?
I'll move that we vote, and I move to vote no to granting the variance.
So you're for clarification, you're making a motion to deny the variance requests.
That's correct, Mr. Chair.
All right, we have a motion. Does somebody would like to second that?
I'll second the motion.
Okay. We have a motion and a second. Any discussion before we vote about the motion? All right. Please indicate how you would like to vote. All right, and oh wait. Some of you didn't vote on the right thing, so we'll have to fix that. Yeah, I know. You have extras? Yeah, how about just do that? Can she just change the number on the top? Okay. And sorry, we'll get there. Okay, back at it. In the issue of variance 2616, there are 4 votes against the motion and 1 vote for the motion, meaning that the motion was denied, but also meaning that the variances are approved. Is that right? Maybe not. I'm looking to Julia for some guidance.
Mr. Chairman, based upon what I heard from the board, I want to be sure everyone voted correctly. If you made a motion to deny the variance, then you should have voted in favor of the motion. But if you are against the variance or for the variance, you should have voted against. Right.
If you voted for the motion, you're voting against the variance as presented.
Yes.
Variances. If you voted against the motion, you are for the variances. I guess, nod heads, did everybody?
I think correct me if I'm wrong, the proper procedure would be that if the motion was ultimately voted against, then a second motion should be made to approve the variance, and another round of voting should take place.
I think that I'm fine with that. I think that's probably appropriate following the rules we do. Director Crane, are you in agreement?
My concern would be that there was a motion to deny and a second, but the votes don't align with the motion.
I agree.
I'm going to say that again.
There was a motion to deny the variance, and then it was seconded, but the vote did not reflect in that way.
Yeah, I mean,
So I think there's some internal confusion about.
I don't know if there's
maybe
internal
not.
confusion or just, Heidi, you seconded the motion, were you?
I don't think we need to do that.
Okay.
I think we may just need to clarify. I mean, if everybody is comfortable with their motion, I do tend to agree with Mr. McEwen that it may be more clear to then hold a vote in the affirmative,
Okay.
just for clarification.
Let's, I think we'll be more transparent if we hold a second vote.
Yeah.
I don't see anything prohibiting us from orally affirming what our vote was in this.
Sure.
And I'll step up first and say I voted in favor of my motion to deny the variance.
I voted against the motion.
I voted against the motion.
And I incorrectly voted on the paper. So that's,
Oh, you voted incorrectly on the paper?
yes.
Okay.
I voted against on paper.
All right. Would you like to amend your vote? Okay. Are we better now? Okay.
I think just for the record, since all of the four members, Mr. Craig should be on the record as well.
Yeah, Mr. Craig?
And I voted against the motion.
Thank you. As we've heard, so now with the corrected votes, thank you for putting up with this. We had 2 for the motion denying the variance and 3 against the motion denying the variance. In that case, the variance is,
We need 4 votes.
yeah. Thank you. And explain the process. With our quorum or our bylaws require a vote of at least 4, regardless of how many members are present, to pass or deny, in this case, the variance. So it did not pass. So the applicants, you can appeal this in district court within, is it 30 days? Within 30 days, or I believe you can come to us with an amended application at any time. Did I state that correctly, Julia?
You did.
Okay. All right. Thank you, everybody, for your time. Yeah. That was a little bit of a slog. I'd like to request or offer a 5-minute break, and people can use the bathroom, get a drink of water or something. All right, Butch, I think we're gonna start. So which one? Joella, which one are we doing next? But they're not here? Okay. Which one are you here for?
She's here for the next variance.
For the 17? Okay, all right.
But it doesn't look like
But,
there's
but this,
individual here for that.
all right, well, do we go through your presentation, or do we just ask?
So I think that we'll just ask if there's a representative here, and if there isn't,
Then we'll,
we'll just say, moving on to the next.
okay, very good. All right, while they're finishing their talking, I'm just going to make a check. The next thing on the agenda would be conditional use permit 2616. Is there a representative for that here? Seeing the lack of people in the room. All right, then we will move on to item C, variance 2617. And Joella, are you giving this one? Nope. Back to Aiden.
Me again.
Let's do it.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chairman. This variance application is for to be determined Hillside Drive, variance 26-17. The applicant is Jill Johnson. The proposal is to locate a primary dwelling within 3 feet of the side yard property boundaries varying from provisions outlined in the Butte-Silver Municipal Code 178808 R1S minimum side yard width. This section of the code requires primary structures to be built no closer to the side property boundaries than 15 feet. Like discussed, the applicant is requesting 3 feet on the north and south side property boundaries. The R1S zoning district's primary permitted use is single-family homes, so long that they meet zoning and building code requirements, and this zone has no lot coverage requirements. The zoning character of the existing neighborhood is residential. The proposed development is within the suburban residential place type of the comprehensive plan. This place type prioritizes single-family dwellings on larger lot sizes. This is an aerial view of the parcel in question. As you can see, it is completely surrounded by other R1S zoning district properties. So variance must not be contrary to the public interest. Zoning districts are designed to complement one another and promote cohesive development for neighborhood aesthetics, density, and compatibility of uses. Setbacks were established to protect the public interest by providing sufficient air and light and ensuring emergency access. The subject property and surrounding neighborhood are characterized by low-density residential development, specifically 1 dwelling per acre or less dense. Many dwellings feature detached accessory structures. Aside from the side yard setback relief, the applicant will meet all other zoning requirements, including height, front yard setback, and rear yard setbacks. With a 12-foot reduction to the side yard setbacks, it is possible that a distance of 18 feet would separate the proposed build from any future development on the adjoining lot to either the north or south, rather than the expected distance of 30 feet. However, this should not considerably impact the amount of air and light available to what is normally expected of the zone. In conclusion of law, the proposed build is a permitted use in this zone and does not impede on the prevailing character of the existing neighborhood. It is likely the development would not be contrary to the public interest. Literal enforcement of the provisions of this title will result in unnecessary hardship. As we discussed, a hardship is defined as a peculiar shape, topographical feature, geological trait not created by the applicant. The parcel is an irregularly cone-like lot that narrows significantly towards the front of the property, creating unusual dimensional constraints not shared by neighboring properties. Additionally, a majority of the site is burdened by steep hillside terrain, substantial rock outcroppings, and elevation changes that severely limit development opportunities. Furthermore, a drain field will be located between the above described conditions and the proposed build. In conclusion of law, a hardship is present, and they did not result as a condition created by the property owner. Due to the location of the drain field, the unusual cone-like shape of the parcel, and the rocky terrain, it may be reasonable to allow a reduction in the side yard setbacks from 15 feet to 3 feet. This was a picture provided by the applicant. This would be from the rear of the parcel. You can see the rock outcroppings as well as the terrain that where those trees are located. So the actual build would be built on the other side of kind of where we see the trees in this picture. These are two other pictures to kind of depict the potential hardships. The first picture on the left shows the proposed build with the drain field behind. Obviously that drain field can't be located anymore to the rear because that's when you start running into those geographical traits which are depicted. You can kind of see from the aerial image in the red circle where those lie. Spirit of the ordinance shall be observed and substantial justice done. So it does appear that public health, safety, and the general welfare may not be impacted by the applicant's proposal to locate the house within 3 feet of the side property boundaries. The public health and safety must be weighed against the rights of the applicant to develop the property in a way that may be suitable. If it can be protected, a variance approval may be appropriate. It would appear literal provisions of this chapter would deprive the applicant of rights commonly enjoyed by other tracts in the same district because the proposal is consistent with neighboring development. Many parcels in this area have been developed but do not have the geological or structural limitations this parcel features. Approving this variance would not grant the applicant special privilege that is denied to other adjoining landowners. This zoning district allows for single-family homes and has no lot coverage requirements. Any property owner within this zone has the option to construct a single-family dwelling on a vacant parcel, being that there is not already an existing single-family home on the same lot and no other unique constraints exist. In conclusion of law, the variance request maintains the spirit of the zoning ordinance and meets the intent of the existing neighborhood. Without reasonable cause to prohibit varying from the regulations of this zone, denying the variance would be unfairly applying regulations to some property owners and not others within the same district. It appears that if this application were approved, the spirit of the zoning ordinance would not be compromised by allowing the reduction in the side yard setbacks, provided that the new development meet all other zoning, building, and fire code regulations. The intent of zoning is to prevent incompatible land uses or activities from impeding the health safety of adjacent land uses. The proposal does not appear to be contrary to the public interest and bears hardships unique to the property. Granting the variance provides relief enjoyed by others in the same district. Our planning staff recommendation is to approve the variance based on written findings of fact as described in the staff report. The board may alternatively decide to deny the application or continue public hearing. Thank you.
Thank you, Aiden. Are there any questions of staff at this time? All right, seeing none, would the applicant please come forward, say who you are, and tell us about your project?
Okay. Thank you, Chair and members of the board. My name is Jill Johnson, and this is my parents' property they plan on building a house on. And to McEwen's comments from earlier discussion, we have natural hardship and impediments from the natural steepness of the hillside we're on. And then when we had the surveyor come out, he discovered there's several rock outcroppings that are going to make it like impossible to excavate. And then the shape of the property itself. It's very narrow up front and the house doesn't fit. I'm open to any questions.
Thank you. Any questions of the applicant at this time? All right, seeing none, we'll move on to public hearing, which should go pretty quick. Is there anybody here would like to voice an opinion in favor of this project? All right, seeing none, anybody here willing to voice an opinion in opposition to this project? Again, seeing none, we'll close the public hearing. All right. Board members, yes.
I guess, you know, since the last variance we were discussing and this interpretation of the law in which I explained and discussed as defined by the Montana Supreme Court. In this case, this is exactly what the Montana Supreme Court was discussing in their opinion, stating that this must result from a condition unique to the property, as shown in the staff's proposal and by Ms. Johnson. There is certainly a geological and topographical features that create a hardship, and this is not a hardship created by the applicant. So I would move to approve the variance.
All right, we have a motion to approve before second. Do we have any other discussion? Or a second, whatever we want to do.
I'd second the ordinance, or second the motion, excuse me.
Okay. All right, we have a motion and a second for variance 2617. Everybody pick the right sheet. Thank you. All right, this is a lot easier this time. In the issue of variance 2617, all votes are for the motion, so you passed, and you'll get a letter from the staff soon to that effect, and good luck. Yeah. All right, I think number 5 on the agenda is any other business announcements. Ms. Director Crane, are there any announcements you want to make?
Mr. Chairman, the Butte-Silver Planning Department, on behalf of the Planning Board, is currently in the process of responding to the latest round of public comment on the zoning ordinance. We are anticipating bringing a draft forward for review in early August and then holding a public hearing at our regularly scheduled Planning Board meeting, ideally seeking the recommendation of the Planning Board to refer the zoning ordinance to the Council of Commissioners. Barring any major delays, that is likely to occur. as scheduled. And so we should be seeing a new zoning ordinance with new provisions that provide specificity for each district very soon. So as members of the board, it'd be great if you would spend some time reviewing the new ordinance and providing your input where you feel it is most important.
Thank you, and you'll let us know when that is officially out? Okay. Thank you. Any other business? Seeing none, let's move on to item 6. Let's adjourn. Thank you for everybody.